Welcome back to the Model A Mabel neighborhood. This video will attempt to tell the story of Model A Mabel's namesake. Model A Mabel was named after my grandmother, Mabel Athelene Richardson. What follows is a grandson's connection to his grandmother, a narrative that I had written in 1996, but now pulled forward in time, revised, and updated for this channel, with included inputs from her other grandchildren as well. Allow me to introduce you to Mabel, a remarkable woman who once said, quote, "I am so lucky to have lived when I did, as I was able to see man go from horse and buggy to the man on the moon." End of quote. My sister, Joanne, who is the family history keeper, believes that this photo of Mabel may be part of her wedding photos, taken when she married her first husband, Burl C. Mabel and Burl married in November of 1913. Before I start, my great-grandfather had nicknamed her Billy. The potential reason is provided during my 1996 narrative. I am going to read my old story. However, occasionally I will stop to add in my siblings' narrative to provide a fuller picture of the life and times in which Mabel lived. The title of my writing was The 13th Child, and again, originally written in 1996. Let's get started. I received a large envelope from my brother, Michael, in the mail. When I opened it, I found inside a computer-scanned picture taken from an old photograph of my grandmother, Mabel. My brother had enlarged the picture 200% from the original. With its increased size, the photograph had acquired a strength. At least it did for me. I noticed her head had a subtle tilt that seemed to acknowledge the gravity of her life. Her eyelids covered the top of her irises, and they spoke of an understanding that life offers both joy and pain. Her smile spoke of a sealed agreement to life's contract. Her portrait image had been captured in the 17th year of her life. She wore a sheer blouse with her collar held tightly by a ring of tiny pearls. Her hair hung short and scissor-cut. These two forces had always compelled my eyes into her soft face. This family picture had toured through the hands of all of us subsequent generations. It continues to travel today with the fresh eyes of all the great-grandchildren that follow. When it comes to old family pictures, this one had earned the title of classic. I felt compelled throughout that day to look at this enlarged photograph of my youthful Grandma Mabel. Each time I did, I felt the edge of something mysterious about to happen. The following morning, I woke, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat down next to the photograph. This time when I looked, my eyes locked upon hers, and I found myself pulled into a rushing tunnel and stretched thin like thread. I abruptly dropped into some other side, and found myself staring at myself. And in this, she became alive. Across 83 years of time, we conversed. I am just beginning to understand at the age of 43 what Grandma Mabel Richardson had learned by the age of 17. Her knowledge came from her childhood. She grew to maturity on the Richardson farms in Lyons, Ohio, and in Breckenridge, Michigan, which she shared as the last child with 12 other siblings. With her tiny femininity immersed in the dynamics of the Richardson family, she had become her father's favorite, the man who I am named after. And she acquired from him the nickname Billy. Her father had the wisdom to provide this masculine name to equip her with the tools needed to survive the stampeding force a large family creates. Now, a brief break. Here I will add a story from my sister, Joanne.
I have a story that I am quite certain is truthful. Mom has told me this little story a number of times, and it never really changed much each time she told it. But I was looking back the other day at some of my old notes, and I found some notes that I have written down while talking to Grandma herself. And this little story was among it. So here we go. Now, Grandma was saying whether she saddled up a horse or hooked it to a buggy, her dad always reminded her. He'd say, "Billy, if someone wants to race you, make sure you beat them. Don't come home if you don't." And Grandma said this was always said with a grin and a wink and followed by a gentle slap on the horse's flank. I asked her, "Did you ever not go home?" And her comment was, "Well, sometimes I took the long ways home, period."
Now, let's return to the story. Life had given her a kindness. As the baker dozen child, Billy discovered in the family's whirlwind that her identity resided inside of her. She further learned she could only maintain control over one person, herself. Consequently, she lived her life with the same naturalness as we speak our language. Most of us never had this learning in our childhood, but rather in the classroom of adult life. Unfortunately, what is simple for a child to discover and accept is often difficult for an adult. Billy discovered that the life outside the Richardson farms were filled with smaller families and fewer options. She found no man in this small rural community with the 13th child wisdom. Now is a good time to add some more history from my sister Joanne.
There was this time a rooster chased me. Now, it was winter, and I was following my parents and my grandparents through that huge old barn. And I was trailing behind because I was playing with the barn cats. And man, all of a sudden I felt a bump, and a push. When I turned around, I saw this beautiful colored rooster strutting around behind me. This old rooster didn't like me in his territory. And he flung himself again at me, and he was trying to inflict a really nasty bite if he could. But I felt no discomfort as my winter coat and leggings were so thick that old boy just couldn't get a grip on me.
She and Burl continued to live in Breckenridge, Michigan, where she had some family until at least 1917. Through the 1920 federal census, we find her and Burl renting a small farm in Commerce Township, Michigan. Mabel was now 23. The following year, our mother was born. 6 years later, Mabel divorced and remarried. The second marriage, to Joseph Taubitz, takes her from the farming community that has been her life for 29 years. Billy now was living in the city of Detroit. Eventually, Billy goes full circle and comes back to the farming community. In 1945, they and their third daughter, Patricia, moved to a farm in Wauseon, Ohio. I speculate that they were looking for an occupation that would see them through their senior years. Billy knew farming, plus the thought of returning to where she grew up and having family in and around the area would surely be a comforting draw. The majority of immediate family still lived in the Lyons, Ohio, and Morenci, Michigan area. Also, this was where the family cemetery resided. But that changed. Billy and Joseph sold their farm and purchased a home-style restaurant in the small farm town of Morenci, Michigan. The population of Morenci then was about 2,000 plus. Joseph was a hard-working family man, but apparently didn't take to farming, especially with the chickens. It appears that Mabel had to take up the slack, and eventually it all became too much for her. In 1955, they divorced. Joseph went to live with their son in Wisconsin. Here, my sister speaks of Grandma Mabel's pies baked at the home-style restaurant.
The home-style restaurant, it was well known for having the best pies around. I mean, people would come from other towns to purchase Grandma's pies. And Grandma could whip up a pie. Oh, man, that was awesome. Heck, she was making pies since she was a little girl. And she didn't even need to look up a recipe. And Grandma always used fresh ingredients, and she didn't skimp on anything. Banana cream was full of bananas and thick, sweet cream filling, and fruit pies filled full of fresh, tasty fruit. Gotta admit, I always admired her and envied her for that talent.
Now, let's go back to my 1996 story. Billy went on and continued the restaurant business. She worked hard, quietly serving the town like its 13th little girl. Unlike her father, the town never noticed, and in her late years, she closed her business, sold everything to pay off debts, and then lived on Social Security. In these later years of her life, she became friends with a wonderful man named Herb. One day, Herb asked Mabel to marry him. She told him she was too old for that sort of thing, and besides, she had already married twice, and that was enough. Herb became Billy's best companion. Billy died at the age of 89. Let's break here. This is a good place to hear a story from my younger brother Michael about his experience as a child in Grandma Mabel's home-style restaurant in Morenci, Michigan.
As a little boy, I was checking out the gumball machines Grandma had, and was really digging on one that had little plastic toys in it with some assorted gumballs. They were a penny apiece. Dad gave me a few pennies, and all I got was gum, no toys. I remember Grandma watching me from behind the counter while I was checking out the toys in the gumball machine. Just before we left, Grandma, with a huge ring of keys, opened the gumball machine and took the glass dome off, brought it to a table, and poured out the contents. She said to me, "Take the ones you want." I was so excited, could not believe this. Then Dad spoke up, and he said, "Mom, that cost you money." Grandma replied, "That's okay." I took about 10 toys or so, a few Jeeps, a couple tanks, cowboy horses, a few dogs, and a whistle. Then Grandma put the loot in a small paper bag for me, and then added another handful. I had those toys for many years. The last time I saw them was when I was packing up to move to New York.
I also have some audio memory from my older brother David, recorded over the phone. Here it is.
Well, it's one of the memories that really sticks to my mind, being with Grandma, is on the farm in Ohio, below Morenci, Michigan.
In Wassian?
Yeah, close to Wassian. Yeah, it was kind of like halfway between the two. I just remember Mom and Dad dropping me off one summer, and they're going to leave me there for the summer. And they had a dog named Dumbo, and the dog and I got along really good. And Dumbo seen me, and we're playing. And I was chasing her around, and she ran across a hill, and I followed her, and I got halfway across that hill, and I sunk up to my waist in the hill. And then I looked down and realized that I was it was a chicken poop hill, from Grandma's chickens. And then I came back up to the house all full of chicken poop up to my waist. And then I remember Grandma screaming at me, "Don't you come in, don't you come in." And then she kept me outside. She didn't have running water at that time. And I can remember pumping and filling the buckets full of water and washing me down outside.
So you were pretty stinky, huh?
Well, I was stinky. I always remember the look on her face, you know.
Let us continue with my story, The 13th Child. I had just been drawn into the photograph and felt connected to my Grandma Mabel. Here we go. From that mysterious place I had gone, I saw this life of hers. But Billy, too, saw into my life. She felt the embarrassment I had of my 2 failed marriages. So she reminded me that we are all the 13th child. Most people don't realize it. She reminded me that my name was Jim. She reminded me that I have more opportunity than she could ever dream possible for herself. She reminded me that life ends. Maybe once long ago, when I blew bubbles, while Billy held me in her arms, I looked up and saw this woman at some crucial human being imprint point. Her young face traveled deep into my psychic. You see, for several months now, I have had a mysterious woman enter my dreams at night. This mysterious woman stares at me, same as Billy does in this photograph. In my dreams, I never could understand what the woman was trying to convey. But I know Billy's message. I am not the kingdom, but the 13th child. I cried. Billy did not. That ends my story. Here are some other audio stories provided by my younger brother Michael and my older brother David. From Michael.
I remember Grandma was visiting us for a week or so. It was around 1974-75. Earlier, Jim had bought an old, crappy stand-up piano. It was really heavy, as I recall. And I know that because I helped carry it in and out of the house. One evening after dinner, Mom talked Grandma into playing piano for us. Grandma sat down at the piano and started playing. She tinkled on the keys for a while, and then all of a sudden went into this most amazing boogie-woogie piano piece I've ever heard. She jammed like crazy, up and down the keys, and after a few minutes of playing, she stopped. She whacked her knee and said, "Wow, that felt good." Grandma was a very talented piano player.
From David.
What I remember about Grandma, I can remember she had a horse named Old Jim, and it was like a Clydesdale horse. She would put me on his back. She would take me out to the field, and he'd be out there grazing, and she would pick me up and put him on his back. Oh. And I would ride that horse, for a long time through the day. I almost would fall asleep on him. And then after a while, if he was outside of the barn, there was a couple of times I went up to the fence and I would call him. He'd come right up to the fence. I'd crawl the fence and get on his back and ride him out.
Wow.
Yep.
One last story from Brother Michael.
This story is more about Jim and I than Grandma. Grandma's backyard in Morenci was loaded with lightning bugs, or some people call them fireflies. There were no lightning bugs at Centerline at the time that Jim and I were growing up. Jim and I would catch lightning bugs in mason jars that Grandma gave us, and we'd take them home to Centerline. I remember going to bed after a day visit at Grandma's house, and the lightning bugs were in mason jars on our dresser. In the dark, when the lightning bugs would flash, they would cast giant bug shadows on the wall. For a kid, man, that was the coolest thing ever. Next day, Jim and I would let the lightning bugs go. It was maybe 5-6 years later that one evening I was in the backyard of 7239 when I started seeing lightning bugs flashing in Centerline. I thought to myself, wow, Jim and I did it. We brought lightning bugs to Centerline.
Yes, I remember running around catching those lightning bugs down at Grandma Mabel's house in Morenci, Michigan. Those lightning bugs were like our connection with Grandma Mabel. It is a flash of love and joy that we as children received from her. That life spark she gave everyone. And, well, It still runs through all of her subsequent generations of children, even today. Hey, Grandma, can you play the piano?